Hello, this is Corey,
This is Janine.
and this is another episode of Cart Logic. And today we're going to talk about a Los Angeles article that talks about the President Trump trying to change what is called the Flores Agreement to basically in the how to handle immigrant children. And for those that don't know, the Flores Agreement basically says that if the United States in 1997, the court had a settlement that basically said that if the government is going to detain children who are coming into the country illegally, that they can only detain them for no longer than 20 days. But what the Trump administration now wants to do is get rid of the Flores Agreement so that they can detain them for as long as they see fit. And Donald Trump essentially said that the reason why he wants to do that is to deter other immigrants from coming in illegally. So he basically wants to scare them away from the country. What are your thoughts about that, Jardine?
I have a lot of thoughts. My first thought, though, that pops into my head is when did the U.S. become a country that was afraid of immigration and of immigrants? And why is this now becoming such a big thing that people are so afraid of? And my first thought is it's because of the statistics showing that white men are starting to be in the minority in our country, and immigrants and people of color are on the rise. And that's scary to a lot of people because that means in their minds they no longer have control of the way things are being ran. Mm-hmm. I was listening to NPR a few days ago, and someone from the Trump administration was speaking about this, and they were saying they're okay with immigrants as long as they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, as they've done. And my first thought was, when did the president pull himself up by his bootstraps, along with many others in the administration, many of those that are in power and tend to stay in power, right? So we know generational wealth, things like that, keep people in positions that they're currently in. And so when I read things like we can hold children for an indefinite amount of time, I mean, we have just gone back so far. And the fact that people are ignoring this or choosing to pretend it doesn't exist because it doesn't directly affect them is even worse.
Well, there's a lot there to unpack, but I think that the first thing is that number one, we are humans 1st before we're citizens of a country. We are humans of this world. And whenever we begin to think that it is okay to treat other human beings less than we ourselves would like to be treated, we are racist.
Well, and then that brings into the point of, right, that's why we feel there's a need to label people, because then you justify it in your mind. Well, they're this, so it's okay for them to be treated like this. Well, they're an immigrant, or they're black, or they don't deserve the same level of respect as I do because I don't have those certain labels I'm putting on someone else.
Right. I think also it's important to understand that there is not one person of European descent that did not receive some type of assistance to get to where they are today.
Exactly.
People forget when the country wanted to expand and Europeans were able to do a whole big race to get land for themselves for free. The land granting part of the country. We forget that banks would only lend to white people and not African Americans and other groups.
Right. And was it after, what war was it where only the white soldiers were able to be granted loans to buy homes, not the black soldiers?
World War II?
Okay.
World War II? I believe it was after World War II that and then going into part of the Vietnam War,
Okay. Right.
that many things were not afforded to other people. So the fact is that if you call yourself white instead of German, French, Portuguese, Spanish, Austrian, Russian, Irish, British, I can go on and on. If you call yourself white, then just because you're white, you, whether you asked for it or not, no one is saying you asked for it. No one is saying that you want to keep it that way. Even some of you do, right? You have a head start.
Yes.
And you have a certain reputation that history has given you that allows you to have more advantages than other people.
And to be clear, if you consider yourself white, you have been the recipients of government assistance far longer than any immigrant group has ever been.
That is definitely for sure. And so when we talk about this issue of detention, and I hope people go to our website and read our blog, especially the blog entitled Our Crime Against Humanity, right?
Now remind them what's our website?
Our website is destroyracism.org. That is destroyracism.org. And you will realize that I remember as a kid, we would read about the Holocaust. We would read about slavery. We would read about the Japanese internment camps. And we would all say, if that was me living back then, I would never allow that to happen. I'd be speaking up and all that kind of stuff. Well, you know what?
Real quiet around here.
There's a whole lot of crickets chirping right now. And that is because when history tests us in the greatest parts, or most challenging parts in history, that's when we determine how good people really are. Not during good times. And so right now, we are seeing our civil rights movement 2.0.
Yes.
Right? We are seeing now our anti-racism struggle. And when history records this time and students are reading about our time in history, the worst thing that can happen is when a young person will come up to us and say, when all of that craziness and hatred and violence was happening, what were you doing during that time? Right? And unfortunately, one of the responses cannot be, well, I did not participate in that. Right? Understand this. Watchers, please understand this. Silence is racist.
Yes.
There's only two things you can be. You can be a racist or you can be an anti-racist.
And silence is taking the side of the oppressor.
And silence is racist. You can't even, and saying I'm not a racist, there's no category for that. There's no definition for not racist.
No brownie points for that one?
Not at all. You're either a racist or an anti-racist. And to be an anti-racist, that means every time you see it, every time you hear it, you're going to speak out against it. So if you do not speak out against it, you are a racist. You have to understand that. And yes, you're a racist if you don't speak out and you're black. Being black does not make you not a racist. That does not save you, right? It doesn't matter what color you are, no matter what ethnicity you are. If you do not speak out against it, you are a racist. You can either be a racist or an anti-racist. There is no not a racist.
So I like to end every one of our blogs, every one of our recordings on this note. Cart Logic, we're about action, not just word. Next steps.
Next steps is that we need to now begin to have discussions with our friends and family about these things.
Yes.
We have to make sure, because a lot of times when we read things, we assume people
Mm.
will come to the same conclusion.
Right.
We have to make sure that, number one, as our children are hearing about these things, that we're actually having explicit conversations about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
We also need to make sure that we're using our social media
Right.
to say, no, this is wrong and this is not acceptable. And then we need to make sure that our elected officials understand that being on the sideline is not okay either. And so we have to make sure that they are voting against these type of things.
Vote, vote, vote.
Voting is so important, and it'll be even more important than ever. Everyone says this, I know. This is the most important election in our lifetime, right? But more than ever in the 2020 elections, we have got to vote these racists out. This is Cart Logic as we advance dignity and humanity forward. Thank you.